nature. So ultimately, with a 1-point perspective, we're trying to draw a ground. So kind of like Earth, and then the horizon and the sky. So the horizon is the space that separates for us visually the sun from the ground. Like I said, unfortunately, I don't have the actual picture to show you, but I do have it on the assignments link. So the first thing I'm going to start with here, since we're trying to separate the Earth from the sky, would be the horizon line. So since I do have a ruler, and again, you can freehand this if you need to. In fact, you know what? I'm going to try to freehand it since I don't really like using rulers. In the classroom, of course, I would make it a requirement to use a ruler. But I know that you're at home, and some of you may or may not have rulers. So we're going to start with the horizon line here in the middle. So as I am drawing this, the expectation is that you're drawing this as well. Okay, so just like any other, if we were looking at a landscape or, land and earth, of course the horizon line is not always going to be completely straight. If we're in a city, of course it'll be straighter because we have streets and sidewalks that are created by engineers out of concrete and tar. So of course you're going to have a very straight horizon line. But in this case, it's going to be a little bit more fluid. The next point I'm going to ask you to draw is a vanishing point. So again, this that we're trying to do is called a 1-point perspective. So I'll write it out here. Typically on our drawings, I ask students not to write on their paper, but since this is kind of a practice, I'm asking you to write on the paper, okay, so that you can remember what we're doing here. So this is a 1-point perspective drawing. All right, so we have our horizon line here. Hopefully you can see my writing. See if I can make this a little bit bigger here. So we have our horizon line going through here, and then here we have our vanishing point. I'm not going to write it all out, or maybe I'll just do the dot and then make a little line here. Usually I'll just put VP for vanishing point, but since some of you might be new to this, vanishing point, I'll write it out. If you took art in middle school, you probably did a drawing like this. This one here, I'm incorporating people, kind of cartoony people, so it might be a little bit more challenging than something maybe you've done in the past. All right, the next step is there is a building here, and then there are initials here. There is a rectangle up here, and then a cylinder and cube here, and then the people are on this side here. So trying to draw everything in here. So I would say the easiest part to start with would be maybe the rectangular form that's up here. You might be asking, why is there a rectangular form up in the sky? This is going to be more of a cartoony drawing. Later on, if you want to do something more super realistic, I guess we can do that. But right now, I just kind of want to show you the basics of 1-point perspective. So typically, so if there was some sort of rectangle in the sky, of course, and I was facing it, looking at it, then I would see the front of it. And again, folks, I'm drawing this freehand, but if you are one of those people who has a tough time drawing straight lines, then definitely use a ruler or some sort of straight edge. And notice, my rectangle is not perfect. So, yeah, feel free to use, anything you have there handy to make straight lines. I have noticed some students struggle with making straight lines. Okay, so I'm seeing the front of the rectangle, and then I want to create the edges. So if I was, from my vantage point, from where I'm seeing, from where we're seeing, we would most likely see the bottom of this rectangle and the side of the rectangle, right? We wouldn't see this side because unless we were standing over here. We wouldn't see the top of it unless we were, well, maybe we could see a little bit of the top of it since, you know, we have kind of a bird's eye view of this paper here. But for the most part, we're pretending as if we were, you know, people standing along here. So to create the edges of this shape, which we're going to try and turn into a form, then we would add what they call I guess a vanishing line. And for this, you might need to use the ruler because it gets a little tricky to try to match it up. So to create the edges, I labeled it as parallel lines, but that's incorrect. Parallel parking, as you know, is where you're parking, I believe, is it where you're parking along next to another car, or is it where I think it's where the lines go this way, where they don't ever meet. In this case, these lines are intersecting with your vanishing point. So I think I heard them called octagonal lines, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to just call them vanishing point lines. So trying to get them straight because you want them to go directly to this vanishing point here. So very lightly, I'm trying to draw these because eventually, anytime you do one point perspective, you know, for practice, it's okay to have these lines, but typically artists don't really draw these connecting lines whenever they're doing something that's a form. They just know, okay, the angles are right here. But since this is more of a kind of educational video here, and I'm trying to show you why we're connecting to these vanishing points. So as you can see now, we have this edge of this form. And we're going to do the same over here. So simply connecting this corner to that corner there. So I think once you get that concept that all the angles are connected to that vanishing point, then it becomes easier just to draw it kind of freehand. All right, so excuse me. Alrighty, so then these lines are going to be parallel here. So whatever's here, I'm going to repeat on this side. Whatever's here, I'm going to repeat on this. And you kind of figure out where you want to end this cube here. So I'm going to go ahead and make it this wide here. So now I can see this edge of the cube, and then I can parallel the here to here. That is the bottom of the cube. Okay, and then of course we would erase these lines, but again, since this is kind of practice, then we're going to go ahead and leave them. And then of course we would shade it in to create the illusion of a form, just like we did with the sphere, but we're going to leave that for last. Okay, the next form we want to do, I would say I'm kind of trying to work from the inside. Typically that's what I try to do, and I think that's a good idea, to work from the inside. Is I'm going to draw this, it's kind of like a building here. And again, it's not anything super complicated. You know, again, if you want to challenge yourself and draw something more realistic, you can, but for this purposes of this assignment, I'm trying to just keep it two simple shapes. So basically we have, again, another rectangle here, but this one is actually on the ground. And since the building is not transparent, I'm going to erase this line here. And I know some of you who got supplies from the library, some of your pencils didn't have erasers, so hopefully you have a handy dandy eraser because you will be doing some erasing here and there. Okay, so if I'm standing here, then most likely I won't be able to see the bottom of the building because it's on the ground. I may be able to see this side. But in terms of this, what we're trying to do here, we're trying to make a door on this side. If you look at the original picture. So then that means that we're trying to create an angle on this end here. So we're going to do the same thing we did here. We're going to connect a line that goes towards the vanishing point here. And another line from the corner of the shape over to the vanishing point. Okay. And then again, you decide how wide you want the building to be. I'm going to make it this wide here, so it's not going over the vanishing point. And then of course, I'm going to erase the horizon line marks, so it's not a transparent building. Okay, so there's a door and some windows here. So in terms of the door, the door would be parallel to the shape. And then the part that students tend to kind of skip over is that the top of the door is going to be to an angle, connecting to that vanishing point. So it appears everything that goes, vertical is parallel, and everything that goes vertical has kind of a slant to it towards the vanishing point. So I know that the edge of the door is going to go about here. And of course, there's a window up here. So that's parallel. And then the tops and bottoms are going to connect to the vanishing point here. So by now you should be getting that idea that up and down is parallel, meaning parallel is when it goes this way, right? And again, on your example, I kind of messed up in the sense that I marked parallel lines that are intersecting. These are intersecting lines because they intersect at the vanishing point. As you can tell, I'm not a math teacher, so. All right, the next step is the windows here. The windows here are pretty simple because basically if you can draw a straight line, parallel, then you'll be able to draw the windows. There's like a little separation between the windows. So it's more of a modern building. Okay, so that's it with that building. Very simple building there. All right, the next point would be maybe the road. So we're going to say there's kind of a road going this way here. And that is the simplest vanishing. One point perspective is a road. Anytime you're driving down a road, you know, there is a destination. And so ultimately, as you are driving, what appears far away appears smaller, right? And whatever is closest to you is going to appear bigger. So that's also a role of perspective. We're going to do a little sidewalk here where the people are going to go. Okay, the further distance you have to draw a straight line, it gets a little bit trickier. So for this, I am using the edge of an envelope here. Okay, let's see, I wonder if I should leave the people for last, because we have over on this side, we have a sphere. So we've drawn a sphere before, so we just simply start with a circle. So I'm basically just, trying to draw the basic shapes. I noticed that somebody already turned in this drawing in one of my advanced classes, and they did kind of a sphere, cylinder, and a cube all together. I thought that was pretty clever, but they were showing more of a 2-point perspective. Remember, if you want something to look, your sphere to look 3D, you have to give it kind of a cross contour effect going on, because if not, it's just going to look like a circle, and we're trying to make it look 3D. So remember, with our other circle, we gave it kind of a cast shadow, also to give it that effect of it being three-dimensional. All right, we're also going to draw a cylinder here. And with a cylinder, just kind of like, a Pepsi can. Typically, I start with the parallel lines here, the shape of the cylinder. Oops, and I messed up because I wanted to make it go along with the edge of this line here. So it's kind of in front of the sphere. So this is kind of similar to if you're trying to draw a neck on a person. Of course, it's not going to be this long, unless you're trying to draw a caricature or something. And then, of course, you have the top part of the cylinder here, so which is kind of like an ellipse. And we want it to be upright, so that's why I drew it and made sure to kind of go along with this line here. And of course, we're going to add some shading to it, but I like to leave the shading for last. So I will continue with the shading on here. Another important thing to remember or to learn is that anything that's in the front in a drawing or painting, then we call it a foreground or forefront. So anything is in the front is foreground. Anything here along the middle is a middle ground, of course. And then we got the background over here. So you probably already knew this, or maybe not, but we're supposed to be learning art vocabulary as we go along here. Okay, the next couple things is we're going to be drawing some people here. So I saw somebody had already turned in this assignment, but for some odd reason they didn't draw the people. So you might want to go back, if that relates to you, and actually draw the people. So let's see, we're going to try to fit them in here, because what typically happens is, like little kids, and I might just do a stick figure, when they draw people, for some odd reason, sometimes they will actually draw them as if they're not standing up, right? This one here looks like it's leaning to the side. So we don't want to do that unless we're intentionally trying to draw somebody who's, laying down on the ground. We want to draw them upright, the people. So I think I'll start with the person here in the middle. So just as I did, I kind of start with the stick figure. So of course, the face is going to go here. And then the legs are going to go here. So notice that the legs are kind of at the end of this vanishing line here. And then of course we have the hands. He has his hands going this way. I don't know why I called him a he. Probably because it doesn't have any hair or something. I don't know. I'm just doing very cartoony figurines. So that's one in the middle, and then I'm going to go back and add the form. And then there's one further back here. So again, just start with the stick figure, make it simple. Also called an action figure or a dominant action figure. So you start with the head here and then the body, the lower portion, so the feet are, so the figure is upright. They all have kind of the same posture other than this one here. This one has a little bit of a different posture going on. This one's actually pointing at the other one. So, and since he's closer to us, he's also going to be a little bit bigger. And again, we usually work with bigger paper in the classroom. This paper here, I'm just using regular printer paper. So this figurine actually has one arm this way and then one arm pointing at the other ones. So his thighs are about here, and then of course his legs are here. So I barely gave myself enough room there for this person here. All right, so just, stick figures. Start with the stick figure, and then you can add the form to it. Let's see. So next step would be to add the form. So let's see. I'm going to start with this little cartoon figure here. I'm not trying to add too much detail here. So just enough to show that this is a person. So notice that I just kind of added a little bit of weight. I'm not worrying about the hands. Basically, he's just kind of standing there with his hands. If you want to give him a little outfit or her an outfit, whatever you prefer, you can. Just I kind of just kept it very cartoony, just because the drawing itself is very cartoony. If you want to give him a happy face, I guess that's a good idea. All right, and so then we have this figurine here. So we're trying to give him a little bit of dimension or form. This one I did put a little nose on him. Don't get too caught up with the facial expressions, because then you will forget to focus on the form here. So it's got the stomach. Maybe I'll make this one a she. I'm going to put the hands behind because I don't want to have to fuss with the hands. Well, you can see what I'm doing. I know I'm drawing really small there. Maybe we'll give her her skirt. So if you want to keep it just as, I just have mine very cartoony on the original. And drawing people is pretty challenging, especially if you're drawing them this tiny. Sorry about that. So yesterday was Halloween. I should have made them like trick-or-treaters. Anywho, so there's Mrs. Burrowhouse right there. I'm gonna give this guy a little happy face too. All right, you guys. So what we're trying to do is to draw the figures upright. So notice that I put the top of their head kind of close to this vanishing point that I did up here on the top, kind of the top of the sidewalk. And then I put their feet at the bottom of the sidewalk here. All right, and then this guy here, I'm going to start with his nose because he's actually facing this way. And you can actually see a little bit of his hand here. I actually made his feet a little short. Guess he's wearing skinny pants. Yeah, drawing on bigger paper is always easier because drawing tiny little people can be challenging. I think I'm going to give him some sunglasses here. Is that his hair? I was like, am I giving him a hat? I wasn't trying to give him a hat. I was trying to give him a ponytail. And he is kind of pointing, so I'm not sure. I guess he's pointing in the direction of the vanishing point. Alrighty. Okay, I will show you how to draw people more properly. I usually start with a kind of like a mannequin like this to draw people, to kind of break down the forms, because drawing people is pretty challenging unless you've been drawing them for a long time or drawing action figures, that kind of thing. Then drawing people can be tricky. All right, so we got the people there, the funky little people. So don't forget to do that on your drawing, because as I mentioned, somebody else turned theirs in and they just totally did not put the people in. So you won't get full credit if you don't take the time to draw these people, to show the fact that what's closest to you is going to be bigger and taller, and what's further away is going to be shorter. All right. Oh, and then I forgot to put in, so that whatever's here in the middle would be considered middle ground. All right. So all we have left to do is the initials. So I'm going to be drawing my initials, but you should be drawing your own initials. Okay, so my first name is Elia, last name is Barajas. So I'll do an E and a B here, but of course, please change it to your initials, so that you have some sort of originality on your drawing there. And I'm sure your figurines might look a little bit different too. So you just simply start with, I guess you can start just with like the letter. So let's see, I'm going to draw the letter right here, the E. So you just start with the letter itself and then create it into a shape. So to create it into a shape, of course, you have to connect the lines here. And then I'm going to put my other initial over here somewhere. So I'm going to draw it here. And the same thing, you want to make it into a shape. All right, and then from there, you simply just connect So if we're seeing the front of the letter, then we're going to see this side. We won't see this side, especially if we're up here in the front. So we're going to simply connect this edge to the vanishing point here, and this one's already kind of connecting. So then you just decide how wide you want it to be. And then sometimes you'll be able to see the inside part of the letter here. I'm not sure what this is connecting to. Not sure. This is typically kind of innate. You wonder, or you figure, okay, if this was a building, would I be able to see the inside of the building? Just in case, like for example here, with the windows, you might be able to see a little bit of the edge of the windowsill. Oops. So it's the same thing with the letter. This is kind of like a window where I can see a little bit on the inside. And then since I'm looking at the front of this one's a little tricky. You could either see this side. Seems like you would be able to see this side because I'm closer to this side. But I'm trying to connect all the vanishing points going this way, so you understand. So there's some sort of pattern to what I'm doing. So this one actually could go either way, and sometimes there's multiple vanishing points. So, but this one I think I'm going to keep with all the other ones and connecting to this vanishing point here. So this edge, of course, is going to connect to here, and this edge is going to connect here. All right, so now I'm going to be able to see these sides here. And you kind of determine how wide you want your letter to be as well. This looks a little funny, like I'm missing something on the inside, like maybe here. I think there should be something going this direction. And sometimes with the letters, if it looks weird, then there's probably something off. So this goes this direction, and then this is just parallel with the top and bottom. And then this is parallel with this line. So you want to look at your letters. If they look cool, if they don't look awkward, then that means you got the right angles on them. This one does look a little funny, but that's because I'm seeing both this side, and then I'm also seeing kind of the inside part of it from the angle that I'm at. Okay, so pretty much I think we got all the shapes down. Now it's just a matter of adding shading. So just like how you did with the sphere, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. Kind of pick a light source where the light's coming from. If you want to use color pencils, you can. I'm just going to keep it pencil and just continue with my regular pencil here. So I'm going to say the light is coming this direction since I already started adding shading on these sides here, or I'm sorry, on this side. So that means the light's coming this way. So I'm going to follow that same pattern. And you know, if we've already done gradation with shading, so if you want to do a little bit more hatching or cross hatching, that's fine. This drawing is not meant to take forever. It's supposed to be more of an exercise. So just note that I just added some shading and then kind of blended with my finger here. So of course the cat's shadow, well, now that I think about it, if the light's coming here, my bad, the shading should go on the other side, huh? Kind of messed up on this one. So the cat shadow would be on the other end if the light's coming this way. And it typically takes Art 1 students a little while to understand shading. Some people get it right away and really can kind of just, oh, okay, shading is like the areas where the light's not hitting. And for some folks, it takes a little bit longer to figure out the rules of shading. Okay, guys, so this drawing, you should be able to finish it by Friday. Really, you should be able to finish it right now as we're working on it together. But if you are just watching the demo, you do have until Friday to get it done. Light on this side, so it's going to be dark on the edges here. And typically I tell you to shade only like in one direction, but since this drawing is so small, it's kind of difficult to keep the picture in the picture frame and show you shading at the same time. So just note I'm basically just adding the shading on the edges. I kind of like the hatching and cross hatching effect here, so I'm going to leave it alone. Also, you guys, shading is not coloring. I'm catching myself coloring the bee. So, oops. Maybe I should blend it a little bit. So you don't have to color the whole thing. But you definitely want to show where the corners and the edges go. So there you can see the difference. Okay, for advanced students, if you want to draw something more challenging, then of course feel free to do so. I think in terms of a 2-point perspective drawing, I think that will draw something a little bit more challenging. Typically, let's see if I have the example drawing here. I have students do a still life with a 2-point perspective. If I can find it here. We typically do this drawing here. So it's kind of like a lollipop with some starburst on the bottom. So kind of like a non-traditional still life. So we will do something a little bit more challenging. This is just kind of to get ourselves drawing again, and also, remind us about shading. Some of you got it right on with the sphere at the beginning of the semester, some of you not so much. So this is kind of a refresher for those students who start a little bit later in the semester in terms of what shading is. And as I just mentioned, with shading, you have to pay attention to where the light's coming from. So if the light's coming this way, then typically everything will be darker on the other end, right? Also, some folks would, kind of like what I just did, have a tendency of shading, and then it gets really blurry, and then they neglect to give their drawing definition. So if you get a blurry drawing, take the time to give it a little bit of definition. And if you have to erase certain parts, then use the eraser. So the time change just happened. I thought we were going to lose an hour, but it appears that we got a little bit of extra time this morning, because that's kind of what it felt like. And I believe we did, I don't know if they call it roll back or roll forward, but I think it's a roll back. All right, you guys, I think you get the idea in terms of the shading. We're basically shading the edges. And then bring in a little bit more detail to the areas that has detail. Kind of giving it like an old building texture here. In terms of the people, you're probably just going to give them a little bit of texture in their clothing, their hair, that kind of thing. Probably not going to shade the faces, so on and so forth, unless you're trying to make them look darker. So yeah, I'm just kind of adding a little bit of contrast in their hairs. Alrighty, so try this at home if you're not working alongside me here, and see what you come up with. Remember, the initials are supposed to be your own. Alrighty, I think I'm done here. I think I included all the shapes, and I think the next time maybe we'll focus on drawing people. But for this afternoon, you should be able to finish this drawing here. If it takes you longer than this afternoon, then of course you have until Friday. So, alrighty, that is it for this 1-point perspective drawing. Also, don't forget your notes. And remember that I kind of messed up on one of the notes. If I can correct the picture, I will, but parallel lines go up and down, or they never intersect. So obviously all of these lines here I would call more as intersecting lines. Because we don't want to call it that thing and this thing and that other thing. It's awesome that as you learn a vocabulary, then everything has a name. And it's, you know, you sound a lot more sophisticated when you don't call everything a thing. All right. That's the end of this 1-point perspective drawing. Have fun.